Okay, hello. We are group two, and today we're going to be discussing our analytics for our app that we came up with, which is EcoPoints. And it's a reward app that motivates students to make more sustainable choices. And if you want to click the survey that we made, it's right there in the corner. Okay, moving on to our problem identification. We found out that many students want to live more sustainably, but struggle to stay consistent. And also that students don't get real-time feedback or reinforcement, which is why we made our app a little bit more gamified. And because when they're in school, they often lack a platform to help students visualize their environmental impact or get rewarded for those positive actions.
I would be discussing the research question. It is which reward mechanism, monetary or social, significantly influences user engagement and sustained participation in a mobile recycling application? So from this research question that we developed, the tough students gave us a recommendation to encourage more tangible architectural elements, like redesigning the recycling points, dedicated spaces for ecological interaction on campus. So they wanted it to become, more action-based rather than reflective, which is initially what our EcoPoints app idea was. So altering this app to increase loyalty, to physically recycling, to become more personally sustainable and create more of a long-term impact.
Okay, and how we integrated this feedback is that we changed our survey to focus on the impact of monetary versus social rewards on long-term engagement with our app. So the tough students' feedback encouraged us to make our idea more action-based. So then we introduced survey items that directly assess the user's likelihood of one, the sustained participation, two, role of competition and recognition, and three, the effectiveness of different reward systems in driving that real recycling behavior. And these changes will allow us to strengthen the relevance of our analysis by identifying which incentives generate meaningful and sustainable actions.
Moving on to our demographic information, the person we want to reach out, our ideal user, it would be someone between 18 to 30 years old, someone who is environmentally conscious or is interested in sustainability, someone that has a moderate to high smartphone usage and wants to make a positive impact through daily habits. Taking that in consideration, we look for people to answer a survey that checked all those boxes.
Going into the purpose of our data analysis, we surveyed 30 respondents with the purpose of exploring the possible correlation of individual motivations on recycling habits. And why are we analyzing the data from our survey? The findings from this data will guide our team on the best course of action for further developing our EcoPoints app to be the most efficient it can be for our cause.
So for the first part of the exploratory data analysis, step one, we did a data prep and visualization. And as you see on our left-hand side, we see descriptive statistics. And we found that students recycle moderately often and place high importance on saving money and public recognition. Incentives like coupons and leaderboards also received relatively high average scores. So as you see, 6.43 for the mean for importance is saving money to when choosing which products or services to use, and 5.13 on importance on public recognition slash status. And then on our right hand side, we have our model summary, which shows the R squared. And this basically shows reasons why students choose to recycle more. This shows that eco points features do matter, but students' decisions are still influenced by other factors like convenience, habits, and personal motivation. So there is still that room for improvement. The app shows that there is room for improvement with our design, and there could be other motivational that could boost engagement further. Next, we see our bar chart, and it's similar to our descriptive statistics. We had a Likert scale survey, and on from the numbers you see 0 to 6, 0 being strongly disagree and 6 being strongly agree. The people who tend to answer neutral tend to score around 3 to 4. And as you see, how important is public recognition? That's scored around 5 point something. And how is important is saving money to you? That's scored really high, closer to 6. And something that scored really low would be which reward system would be more effective in motivating you to recycle consistently for the next 6 months.
Our second step was finding our key metrics, which are our dependent and independent variable. Our dependent being how often does one recycle at home, and independent variable being the type of reward mechanism, either monetary or social. Our third step was establishing our hypothesis. With our hypothesis, we're trying to answer the question, is there a correlation between preferred reward mechanism and personal recycling frequency? Our null hypotheses are once recycling habits are independent on a personal reward mechanism, and personal recycling frequency and mindset are independent, with our null hypothesis being once recycling habits are depending on a personal reward mechanism, and personal recycling frequency and mindset are dependent.
Moving on to step 4, we have the testing of our survey. We ran a regression analysis focusing on the survey from the feedback that we got from the Tufts students. So on the right here, we have all the information on the graph. We're going to start looking at the standardized coefficients. So the coefficients display a mix of positive and negative values. This indicates that some factors may be associated with higher or lower recycling engagement, but since all of the coefficients are not statistically significant, these cannot be meaningful effects. So it's not reliable evidence to prove that any of these predictors strongly influences students' recycling behavior or app engagement. We're then going to be looking at the lower and upper bounds on the confidence intervals. So looking at each of these, they all include 0 between the bounds. So this proves the variables to be not statistically significant. So this is another proof of that. And then looking at the VIFs. A high VIF, which is over 5, is a problem. Our highest VIFs are 3.766 and 3.148, which are highlighted in red. These have moderate multicollinearity, and the rest of the remaining variables have slight multicollinearity, which means that they do not, severely affect the results, and we can still work with the results that we did get for the analysis. Moving on, we have the multicollinearity graph. It just gives an overview of all of the questions in the graph right here.
Step 5 would be to interpret our results. Going over basically what Selena said, we would fail to reject the null, like resulting in the fact that these two our dependent and independent variable are independent from each other due to the lack of significance. So going a little bit more into depth, an interpretation of our results is that none of our independent variables were, like I said before, statistically significant, which also suggests that individuals' preferred reward mechanisms, whether it's social or monetary, actually have very little observable correlation with the amount that they physically recycle. But looking ahead, our findings were likely inconclusive due to our small sample size. We had a sample size of 30. However, our conclusion of our data being with little correlation does not imply that reward mechanisms are inherently insignificant. If we were to collect a larger and more diverse data set and refine our survey questions to better capture individual preferences, this could provide more robust insights. So future research that accounts for these considerations may reveal more meaningful relationships that were not detectable in our current study.
For our final step, step 6, we reflected on how we could apply this information to the real world. So, as my classmate mentioned, monetary and social rewards alone do not significantly motivate college students to recycle. And we thought this may be because students already have a limited time and cognitive capacity to engage with an additional app or reward system. So we thought that instead of relying on external incentives, we could recommend to reduce just the friction by gamifying eco points in a way that fits naturally into students' routines. So these will make recycling quick, effortless, and engaging. The behavior of recycling becomes easier to adopt without feeling as an added responsibility. In this sense, gamification enhances intrinsic motivation and lowers the barrier of participation, which may lead to more consistent, long-term sustainable behavior. Thank you.
So much.
Thank you.